Hello, my YouTube friends. Happy Sunday. So, today I'm going to talk about a house hack that could allow a first time home buyer, or potentially even to help our kids, to be able to buy a property, rent out some of it, have some income coming in, and get them on the journey of financial freedom really early on in life. It's a great concept that you can use as little as 3.5% down using a really good loan program to help either your kids or yourself in that first time purchase. Forgive me, not purpose, on your first time home purchase. So stick around, it should be a really good video. Good morning. My name is Adam Kahn, and this is Investing with Adam K. I hope you guys are enjoying your weekend. Yesterday, I did a live, which was pretty cool. I really enjoyed doing it. The reason I'm doing a video on Saturday, not that you asked, or on Sunday, typically I do the one on Saturday, but I did the live yesterday and I had it posted, but I took it down just because I wanted to have it exclusive for the people who joined in. And I really like that format, so I'm probably going to continue with more live. Now, before I talk about how to use a program where you can put as little as 3.5% down to buy a property where you might be able to help yourself as a first time home buyer or possibly your kids into a property that might be able to cash flow early on and really put yourself in a great position to start building towards financial freedom and how to use good leverage to potentially grow your wealth. Before I get into that, though, if you could do me a favor, hit that subscribe button, smash the like button, make some comments towards the end as you listen along and let me know what you guys think, because I think this is a great opportunity for people who are starting out in life. So, my goal with what I'm sharing today is to teach people how to use very little money out of pocket to be able to buy a property that may be able to cash flow at an early age and teach you how to be able to use that leverage to possibly even grow a portfolio. It's a great concept. It's something I hope to help my son with when he gets to the age where we might start showing him about looking at properties. But you're able to buy a property as a primary residence and look for a fourplex. And that gives you the opportunity to use an FHA loan, which only requires a 3.5% down payment. Now, I don't want to get people off track or teach them the wrong thing because that is the down payment. You also have to be prepared for closing costs. You can try to negotiate that in your offer when you make an offer on the property, but I would typically be prepared just for an average. This is not a specific amount, for somewhere around a 3% dollar amount for closing costs. Now, if you're looking at homes, an FHA loan maxes out at a little bit lower than $500,000. I can tell you the exact amount, but it really doesn't matter, which allows you to look for a home at a purchase price of maybe up to $515,000. As we go along, I'll explain how much to expect to pay in a payment. Now, I'm just using approximate numbers. These are not actual quotes of where mortgage is today, using the exact amount to buy down the rate or anything else. It really is just to give people a rough idea of what they're looking at and what they would need to have to generate the income in the units that you're not living in order to make it cash flow and worth doing, to give a general idea. The other thing I want to explain is that there's good debt and there's bad debt. The advantage here is if you're early on in life and you don't have a lot of wealth at this point, you haven't accumulated a lot, you can take a little bit of risk in the things that you do because if something goes wrong, A, you have a lot of time to kind of fix that and get back on track. And B, it's okay. You didn't have a lot that you had to protect because you were just starting out, which is why having the debt is not necessarily a bad thing. As you get older, I think you want to take chips off the table and mitigate that risk and have less debt. But it does create a really good opportunity when you're early on in life or when you're making that first home purchase to be able to maybe buy a property that might be worth, the example you used, $515,000 with maybe only putting around $30,000 or so out of pocket. Now, if we're using the 3.5% down, 18,000 and change is going to be the down payment. So you're probably going to owe around $500,000 on the property, which is a rather large debt if you think of it in that capacity. But what ends up happening is if you own the house for 8 or 10 years and the value goes up to maybe $800,000, obviously just making that up. Well, you've only put that $30,000 in change out of pocket to put down. You have made your monthly mortgage payments, but hopefully you've been able to offset that from the rent that you're bringing in from the other units, so that really it's only that $30,000 in change that you've put out of pocket. And if that house increased in value like that, the 300,000 that it's gone up over the 10 years is pure equity plus the 10 years of making payments, so you're going to owe a little bit less on the loan that you took out originally. So it's a way to really grow a lot of wealth on a small investment. To me, leverage is the advantage of being able to do real estate versus stocks, where I really wouldn't advise buying on margin or anything like that, because it's a different type of risk. With real estate, as long as you're able to make the mortgage payments, you're not ever going to get called on the loan where it's like the house is worth less, so you have to put in more money. Whereas on a stock, if it falls far enough, you could get a margin call and have to come up with cash that you may not have, and they'll force you out of a position that potentially could go back up in time as well. I also think that yes, real estate's a little pricey right now, but over the long run, it does tend to go higher. And if you can create an opportunity for your child or yourself where you have positive cash flow, you can handle the ups and downs of the market and wherever it moves. And if it moves up in the long run, you'll end up in a really good spot. So I'll share the advice that I'll give to my son at the time when I think it's ready, when he's ready to buy his first property. And that's either going to be when he goes to college or when he graduates college and gets his first job. And, if I'm not around, buddy, I hope you're watching this so I can give the advice through YouTube. So, what I would suggest is look for a fourplex. If you're not familiar what that is, it's a one unit, one building that has 4 units in it. Usually they're either 1 or 2 bedroom units. Then you would live in one of the units and you would manage the other 3. There are lots of options for this type depending on where you live. If it's when he goes to college, I would look for somewhere around the college. If it's when he gets his first job, I would look for somewhere around there. Now, since I want to use the FHA program, since it'll be the first time he's buying a house, you have to stay within the maximum loan amount of what an FHA loan can do, which again I said was around 500,000, tiny bit less, which puts you in a purchase price around 515,000. So you know what the maximum amount of the home you can look for. You're going to end up putting out about $18,000, like $18,025 if it's literally 515,000, and that's your out of pocket for your down payment. And again, maybe another $12,000 or $14,000 to be prepared for closing costs, which you could also ask for the seller to pay for when you make an offer on the property, which would be the route that I would probably suggest to him, so that you're putting as little out of pocket as possible. Now, you have to know the market that you're looking at, and if there's an opportunity to negotiate with the seller, because sometimes you'll be in a place where you can't ask for closing costs because they're not going to give it to you, or if it's a buyer's market or a seller's market and what's going on and what you're able to ask for. So I would really vet agents to find somebody who's good and knows what they're doing and can bring some value to the table. There are a lot of good realtors out there. I know they get a really bad rep and people are really tough on them, but anytime you're looking to make a big purchase, when you try to do it yourself because you start thinking that you're spending so much money on this person and you're not getting somebody who's quality, it's really well worth the money if you're getting somebody who's good at what they do. I'm sure there are a lot of bad agents out there and there are a lot of horror stories and people have terrible words for them, but they're really good ones who deserve the money that they make because they will help you and get you the best deal. Now, that being said, let's talk about some of the numbers. I printed something out. Again, it's why I said these are not actual quotes. I'm just doing it for the purposes of sharing some numbers on the video to give people an idea what it would look like. Now, you end up with a loan amount of $496,975. I used a rate of 6.125, FHA generally has a little bit better of an interest rate than a conventional loan, but they also have mortgage insurance for the life of the loan. It's okay. It gets factored into your payment. It will add some of the like some of it is what's called upfront mortgage insurance, so your balance will be a little bit more than what you expect it to be after putting the 3.5% down, but it still gets put into the payment. And then you have normal mortgage insurance that they've actually reduced the amount that it was because they haven't had a lot of foreclosures, and mortgage insurance is really insurance. Anyway, that's me blabbing because I like what I do when I blab about it. So your principal and interest payment using the 6 1/8 is $3,019, and if you care about the cents, 67 cents. Those of you who watch my channel know that I'm pretty relaxed and things are sometimes estimated. So that's why I said I usually won't include pennies and whatever else. The mortgage insurance is about $227. And then I estimated for like taxes and homeowners insurance around $403. Mainly because here in Las Vegas, I use some ratios that I know the average amount for taxes will be and the average amount for homeowners insurance. I think the homeowners insurance was a little over $100, and the taxes were like low threes or high twos ish. It sounds about right for a home of that value. Now, remember, you're going to have 4 units. Your total payment for those things comes up to $3,650 approximately, plus or minus. Now, you have to be aware if there's an HOA, then maintenance costs, other things that are going to go on if you need help with things. And when I say maintenance costs, you really have to be prepared for when a refrigerator breaks or potentially even an air conditioner that could be quite expensive, but even smaller things like dishwashers or possibly microwaves. So you need to make sure there's an actual profit between what you're renting out the other 3 units for. So in the example I'm using, if your mortgage payment is around $3,650, well, each unit should be making, over $1,200 a month. So if you could find something that's paying maybe $1,500 per unit, you could have $4,500 coming in each month that all 3 units are rented out, living in the other unit so you're there and able to say hello every now and then, make sure nothing's going on that you're uncomfortable with. And now you have a profit coming in of about $800, maybe $900 each month to handle any of those additional maintenance costs or things like that. Now you've put out only $18,000 if you've gotten the seller to be able to cover those additional closing costs, and you're able to have a net positive cash flow on 4 units. If you can own that for a little bit of time and it's working out, eventually the way that you can show somebody to use leverage to continue on, you can then potentially rent out that 4th unit and move on to buy another property and do the same thing. Now, you have to recognize managing properties is a bit of a pain and balance how much you enjoy it or don't enjoy it and how much it's paying off. But even if you just move on and end up renting out that one other unit, and assuming that rents haven't even gone up, you might be able to generate $6,000 a month on the 4 units if they're getting $1,500 a piece with a mortgage and interest and tax payment of approximately $3,650. That's actually a decent profit. Again, this really works for first-time home buyers, people that don't mind having their renters right next to them. And the other thing I would really advise is vet your renters. You don't want to have issues. If it takes you a little bit longer to get your place rented out, to be comfortable that the person has good credit, has a stable job, should be able to make their payments, it avoids a lot of potential losses from having to do an eviction or people who aren't making their payments or problems that may come down the line. So just what I suggest, and this is not financial advice, this is just stuff I've learned over the years, is be really picky about who you rent to. Do the background checks, run the credit. Don't just be too excited to have the income come in. Be in the position that you can afford to have a little bit of time to find the right people to rent your properties. And keep in mind, these are your properties. Like, I would do my best to try to make it a nice like a nice rental so that people want to be there. Maybe I'll fix it up a little bit, do some rehab, put in some newer floors, paint, potentially redo a kitchen. The goal is not just to get it rented and have some place that you're generating money. Give some value to the people who are staying there so you get the right person. That's why you take the extra time to make sure you have the right person, because you need to care for these properties. And I would think of it as like a boutique type of place. And if you're lucky enough or to live in an area that allows for Airbnbs to be done legally, well, even better, you might have a potential to rent out one unit long term, two short term, and live in the other, or however you balance it in order to make this become a potential business and teach your children how to use that leverage for good things. Credit card debt is bad leverage. High interest rate, generally buying things that maybe you don't need. I just don't want to teach them to have bad debt. But if you're borrowing to be able to profit and make money as an investment, and actually that gives you an ability to do little money out of pocket. So if the housing market turns, you haven't put in your entire net worth, or as it's growing, you just haven't put yourself in a huge jeopardy or a bad position, because you still have a long time in front of you. You don't have a lot to protect. Now, when I do this with my son, my plan is to help him learn how to vet the renters and let him be in charge of it and help him with problems that arise along the way. But I really want to let him do it, which is why I'll try to do a judgment as to how I feel about when he's in college. Is it too early, or is it better to wait until he has his first job? Those of you who have kids, let me know what you think. I mean, it depends on the maturity level of your kid. And I don't know where he'll be at that time. At 13, he sure isn't at the point where I'd be thinking about if he'll be ready to buy a home in the next 4 or 5 years, because he sure isn't ready now. But if you buy a place and you have some extra money that you keep in order to be updating it, put in a nice washer dryer, possibly one for all 4 units that people will share. Like, it depends on what you're looking at and how it's set up. But to really make it a nice place so you find good renters, I think it's a great way to be able to help your kids or help yourself make that first purchase, and really learn how to use the real estate market to your benefit. Because the thing is, people get confused. Like, your primary residence, if you buy a single family home that is not a multi unit, like what I live in with my family now, I don't see that as a real asset. I see it as a liability. Even if I own it outright and I've paid off the entire mortgage, I still have expenses. I get that I'm living in the home and I have to live somewhere, but I don't see it as an investment because I'm using that investment. I'm still going to have taxes and insurance and maintenance and all the other expenses to live in the home. And there's nothing wrong with that depending on where you are in life, but it's not really an investment the way that people think of it. If you buy it as an investment property, it should cash flow. It should have money coming in. It shouldn't be something that just has money going out. And for those of you who've never listened to Rich Dad Poor Dad, that's kind of one of the things he talks about, is recognizing what an actual asset is and what a liability is. I don't think of my primary residence, unless I'm renting out rooms or it's a multi-unit building, as an asset. I think of it as the place I live, and my monthly expenses is something I can afford. Now, I want to have money coming in from other sources to be able to afford that, as opposed to it being an expense and me thinking, well, one day it'll be worth a ton of money. Because while that would do your kids great, it really isn't any value for you unless you're actually using the equity in it, which is very hard to do because you live in it. Now, if you think this is a good idea, what I would suggest to do for somebody is that they talk to a loan officer or a mortgage person first. The best thing to do is go in and have your finances in order. Make sure that you actually qualify. Make sure that your credit is good. That's the way to do the process before you start looking for a realtor and looking at homes. There's no sense in looking around trying to find a property until you've talked to a finance person who goes over the monthly payments, if you qualify and if you don't. Because here's the other thing, while people get uncomfortable with that, if you don't qualify, oftentimes they can help you with the direction on how to qualify. They can give you advice on how to improve your credit. They might be able to give you advice on what you need to do to be able to show better income. Do you need to pay something off? Like, there's all sorts of ways and things you can do to get in a better position so you can be ready to purchase. And if you start looking at homes and finding stuff you like before taking care of that, and then find out that you can't purchase because you're not in the position yet, that might be so demoralizing that you don't continue down that path. I would start on the finance things. If there are things to work on, I would just work on it, even if it takes a year or two. I think building wealth is a really good thing. I'd like to see people save for the future. I understand there's a lot of gloom and doom videos out there talking about the impending housing market collapse. And to be fair, maybe they're right. I just don't try to time things like that. And if I can find a property where the math makes sense, it really doesn't matter too much unless I go through an extended period of having a tough time finding renters. I'd still make sure that I can afford to cover a few months if that happens. But if you can get those units rented out and keep them rented out a lot of the time, no matter whether the prices go up or down, it really shouldn't matter because you're going to have the money to be able to cover that mortgage and more and live in one of the units. That's what I think is so cool about that stuff. Anyway, don't forget, hit that subscribe button, hit the thumbs up button, make some comments. Let me know what you guys think. Is this something you want to do or something you want to do for your kids? Happy to answer questions and find this stuff tons of fun. Have a good day.